Hello, everybody, and welcome to Calls. This is the 2022 Wells Fargo DFS Tactics show. Quite a bit to get into, so let's rattle through a couple of announcements. First off, being that this Friday, roughly around 3 p.m., I'm still working the time schedule out. I'm going to start my DFS baseball content. Most likely, it'll just cover the nightly games, so any games played during the afternoon I won't be able to cover just because of the level of detail I want to go into for you all. So any nightly contest, whether that's one game or all 15, I will be covering each weekend for the DFS baseball content. Friday, Saturday, maybe Sunday, but right now it's definitely Friday and Saturday, as golf is still the main content on the channel. So if you're looking forward to that, if you want to play some DFS baseball, or if you're just simply a baseball fan, come hang out. I will be posting on social media tomorrow the exact time that I will be going live. And then I've seen a couple of more field changes. Davis Riley, Pat Perez, and Sayun You'll Know have withdrawn. They have been replaced in the field by various players I'll probably remember, I think, whenever I see them in the rankings tonight. But I wanted to make sure you all knew that heading into this evening, if you've already made some lineups, to double check those and make sure those players aren't in there. So let's get through the rest of this intro. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is the best resource out there. It is going to be well worth your time to go check them out. You're not going to regret investing in fantasynational.com. The links to my social media are in all three descriptions of the videos of the three streaming services. The social media, particularly Twitter, is where I post my betting card for each week, and some interesting research. I posed a question Monday before the Data Dive show. If you all can guess who the one player is that qualifies under the circumstances that I posted, put it in chat or put it in the comments. I'll be curious to see if you all can guess who it is. And then finally, we are live, clearly, as I'm fumbling through this intro. Chat is open. I want to hear from you all. Who are some of your best pivots, some of your best fades? Who do you have some outright wagers on? How do you think TPC Potomac's going to play? How is it going to be different than Quail Hollow? Here for all of that. And if you want to discuss a little bit of baseball or even Kentucky Derby, although to be fair, I don't have much for the Kentucky Derby, but it is this weekend, so we're here for all that. So let's figure out our strategies and our tactics for the 2022 Wells Fargo. And we move over here as we do every DFS Tactics show to start. This is the mixed condition model that I ended up with for the week. Let me make sure chat is open and going. A couple of interesting thoughts here. I did not put any putting in the final mixed condition model. I went back and looked at the two tournaments, the two Quicken Loans Nationals 2017 and 18, and saw that putting, while obviously a big important factor that week, the winners, Francesco Molinari in 2018, Kyle Stanley in 2017, did not have good putting form coming into the tournament. So I didn't feel it was necessary give any more credence to good bent green putters than normal. It just seemed like those two guys had good putting weeks, and they won. TPC Potomac is widely known as a ball strikers course. We saw that all week. Not a lot of around the green metrics tend to play. If you wanted to use some around the green metrics, I would have suggested scrambling, because the scrambling percentage is successful scrambling percentage is much lower here than the average tour event. So the guys that do happen to scramble well are going to gain shots on the field or whatnot, but still didn't feel terribly confident putting any around the green metrics in the final mixed condition model. So you will see this is heavily skewed towards ball striking. and some of the specific yardages that we talked about. So, to get into it, I've put 10% on strokes gained total short courses. It's important to make sure I had enough rounds for everybody. This goes back to the start of the PGA Tour season. Anything with less than 7,200, I believe, went back to the start of the PGA Tour season, back to the Fortinet. There was, I think, 32 rounds was the most on short courses, but most players at least had somewhere in the 14 to 20 range. If I only included from the calendar year forward, January 1st forward, there's just wasn't enough rounds that I felt would make it stable. So going back to the beginning of the PGA Tour season, strokes gained total on short courses, I put that at 10%. We talked, again, all week about how this is a ball striker's course, so I put 10% in off the tee, 20% in strokes gained approach. I really toyed with having 25% in here, but I know that it is my bias that towards strokes gained approach, so I thought a more fair number would have been 20%, and make sure I have enough in off the tee. We saw in the Data Dive show Abraham Answer, who has played this event, I believe only once, but all of his strokes gained came off the tee, and he finished, I believe, in the top 5. I know it was the top 10. I think it was top 5 as well. So wanted to make sure I have enough off the tee as well. I went and focused on bogeys avoided, 5%. It was a very important statistic in the 2018 Quicken Loans National. 2017, it was about equal in terms of birdies gained and bogeys avoided. So instead of putting both, I just put 5% on bogeys avoided, but I did add the short course filter. I looked into the specific players and the stats and whatnot, and some guys really rose or fell when you added the short course filter. So I went ahead and added it and only put it at 5%. I would have been okay with 5% just in bogeys avoided. But again, seeing the drastic differences in some of these players, for example, Rory doesn't even have rounds for short course metrics. I just felt like this was going to be more apropos for this week. So 5% on bogeys avoided on short courses, 5% in greens, just in total, who is hitting their irons well. I didn't want to put a whole lot of stock into this, or at least added stock, when I've got 20% in strokes gained approach. If I put any more than 5%, I felt like it was overkill. However, in proximity, we looked all week, and especially at the Data Dive show, how important proximity was on the two tournaments in 2018 and 2017. We thought it might be the 175 to 200 range when we did the initial research show on Sunday night. However, really looking at the specifics of the data, I felt most comfortable in total proximity, especially with these small greens. Should be pretty explanatory. The closer to prox, the less distance you have to make your putts, all that stuff. So bad putters, or traditionally bad putters, can get away with that sometimes, and I'm thinking that's what happened in 2018 and 2017. Kyle Stanley and Molinari were so heads and tails above a lot of the field in terms of proximity and strokes gained approach that week. Kyle Stanley, in fact, was negative in terms of strokes gained putting. Now, Molinari had a good putting week, but he also gained 10 strokes on approach. It was just lights out. So 15% in total proximity. And then in terms of the specifics on the par 3s, 4s, and 5s, I'll start with the par 5s. And yes, the winners took advantage of the par 5s the most. It was the highest strokes gained by hole by par. But I only put that at 5% for a couple of reasons. One, there are only 2 par 5s on the course. And when I looked into it, and did the color-coded spreadsheet for you all and really dug into that yesterday, there wasn't a lot to be gained from upper tier par 5 performance to, say, middling of the pack. However, in the par 3s, there was a big, it was subtle, but there was quite a difference between guys who top 20'd and guys who had middling to clunker finishes. So I went ahead and put 10% on par 3s. I didn't specify any particular length of par 3, since on the scorecard there is one of each between 150 and 225 plus. But I believe if there's a range that's going to be important, it's the 175 to 200. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out this week, and as I reevaluate my performance next week, if that indeed is the case. And then finally, put 10% in par 4s and in par 4s 450 to 500. It was so apparent, to be honest. I mean, it was just apparent how important the 450 to 500s were. They didn't match precisely the strokes gained par 4 leaderboard, but it was pretty darn close. All of your difficult holes here at TPC Potomac are in this range, so the better the players are at that distance of par 4s, the higher they're going to be on the leaderboard. That's a bold call, if you will. The best players from this range are going to be your leaders or on the first page of the leaderboard. So there's an explanation of the mixed condition model. When I ran the results, my top 10 end up being Corey Connors, Gary Woodland, Tony Finau, Cameron Young, Russell Henley, Matt Fitzpatrick, Keegan Bradley, Martin Laird, Sepp Straka, and Ryan Armour. Ryan Armour, probably a bit of a surprise, but he's been playing the par 4s well. He's very good at the length of the par 4s. And he's been pretty good with his irons, his proximity. So I was surprised to see him 10th. And then looking into it, seeing 4th there, 12th, some top 30s and 25s and such, kind of made sense. I have mentioned earlier that, Paul Casey and Rory don't have any metrics on short courses. They have not played a short course defined by Fantasy National as less than 7,200 yards or less. They haven't played any of those courses in the PGA Tour season. So it was hard to really gauge how much I should account for that in my final rankings. Personally, do I raise Paul Casey and Rory? Do I drop them? But at least pure analytics, they are 12th and 13th. So there is a look at my rankings. Let's go ahead and get straight into the price board. Let me bring up the projected ownerships. So we have 5. We have 5 players in the 10Ks. Those players are Rory, Tony Finau, Abraham Ancer, Corey Connors, and Matt Fitzpatrick. Probably no surprise here that the most projected owned player and the 4th most projected owned player are in this range. However, it's probably not who you think, especially the most. The most projected owned player is Corey Connors. And that it makes me feel better, I guess, in the sense that a lot of people are seeing the same thing I am. Look at these elite metrics, especially when you don't factor in putting. Anything with ball striking, Corey Connors is going to vault up any rankings. He's top 10 in approach, top 5 in proximity, top 5 in off the tee, top 5 in par 4s and the length of par 4s, top 10 in the length of par 4s. There's just a lot to like with Corey Connors. And even though Rory is in the field this week, I truly think Corey Connors is the favorite. Rory has not been hitting his irons very well. His irons are generally Jekyll and Hyde. So if he has a great iron week, sure, he is probably going to be the best player in the field this week. But Corey Connors, that is his calling card. His irons will always be there with him. Yes, he'll have a tournament here and there where He just doesn't play well. But generally speaking, that's his calling card. That's his iron play. So I think Corey Connors is the favorite, especially due to the fact that TBC Potomac is such a ball striker's course, proximity, all of that. So, I mean, Rory is, top 15 in my rankings, but again, I just have Corey Connors as the favorite. So it's going to be really hard for me to get away from the extreme chalk that Corey Connors is. He's above 21.5%. That's chalk I'm going to have to eat. I love Corey Connors this week. Elsewhere in here, the fourth most projected owned player, Matt Fitzpatrick, makes a whole lot of sense. Again, great iron play. Number one in par fives, so if the par fives become more of a factor than I think they will be, he's set up well there. Very good on par fours. There's a lot to like here with Matt Fitzpatrick. Let's see. Yeah, so he is fourth. I'm just scrolling down the projected ownerships just to make sure I'm not missing anybody. So first, or most projected owned player this week, Corey Connors. Fourth being Matt Fitzpatrick. Rory is still fairly chalky. He is at 14%. And Rory's not necessarily a bad play, but I say this a lot of the time, especially with John Rahm. He's generally the most expensive in a price board. Now, last week was a bit of an understatement, bit of an anomaly or an outlier. He was heads and tails above the rest of the field that his price was pretty warranted. Rory at 11.5, while the best player probably in the field overall, I think is pretty restrictive. So it's going to be hard for me to get behind a lot of Rory use. So take what I'm saying here as a bit of a fade. It's not that I'm not going to use him at all, but Rory is a bit of a fade, especially with the price. It's not necessarily ownership percentage. I like the ownership percentage in terms, in relation to Connors and Fitzpatrick. It's the price. I think he's going to be pretty prohibitive to squeeze in a couple of these other players that you're wanting to do or wanting to include. So it's a bit of a fade for me only because of the price, which means that we have Tony Finau and Abraham Answer. You can clearly see who I'm higher on this week. Tony Finau, I think there's a lot to like here. He's coming off a fantastic Mexico Open. His iron play has been dynamic. He's number one in the field in proximity, number one in greens in the last 24 rounds. Tony Finau is playing some very, very good golf and is getting overlooked a little bit. Second at the Mexico. A couple of, the Masters, top 35 in an elite field, that's nothing to scoff at. The Valero, he top 30. A lot of that being predicated on the fact that he didn't chip well that week. He's had some inconsistent performance, but these irons have been dialed in lately. So if that continues, and I don't expect him to gain 8 strokes on approach this week, but if he averages out to 3.5, given his propensity off the tee and the way this course should suit ball strikers, I think Tony Finau is going to have a pretty darn good tournament. I know, big limb that I'm going out on there. Abraham Answer, fine. Just kind of lukewarm. Don't feel great. Don't feel terrible about Abraham Answer. I'd much prefer Tony Finau. And they are roughly at the same ownership percentage. So give me Tony Finau. So in the 10Ks, I'm going to have to go Connors, even though he is the most projected owned player. He's number one in my data model. I'm not going to be able to get away from him. It's Corey Connors first. Then I'm probably going to go Finau second, just due to the lack of ownership and the fact that he is, not too much more in price than these other guys. So for me, it's going to go Connors, Finau, Fitzpatrick, probably Rory fourth, and Answer fifth. Joey, hey, thanks for jumping in chat. Yeah, my trip was great. I've been joking, ever since I've started this channel, this show, that my golf game is comedy really for everybody. But I had probably the best round I've ever played down there. in the Ryder Cup format. So it was a great trip. 28 of us going to play 4 different courses. I appreciate the sentiment and wishing me well. It was a fun time. It was a much needed getaway for a bit. But thanks for jumping in chat. Do you have any pivots or fades that you're looking at this week? Have you put in any outright wagers? I know I've got 3 outrights, including one very spicy one at 250 to 1. So I'm looking forward to that one blowing up in my face. But there's a look at the 10Ks. Let's move to the 9s. We've got Tyrrell Hatton, Mark Leishman, Keegan Bradley, Russell Henley, Gary Woodland, and Patrick Reed. In the 9Ks, you have the used and the not used, the have and the have-nots. You've got 3 players, including the second most projected owned player in here. So half of these 9Ks are getting a whole lot of use, and 3 are not. So the 3 that are getting used and the second most projected owned player probably is going to be no surprise. It's Russell Henley. He is 5th in my data model, but number 1 in strokes gain approach. His off the tee game is lacking quite a bit, but a lot of his ball striking is in the irons anyway. Proximity, 11th. Number 5 on short courses. Par 5 performance great. Avoids bogeys on short courses. He's just very good on short courses. So there's a lot to like with Russell Henley. He is at a little over 17%. And then the 2 others in this range that are getting a whole lot of use, Gary Woodland and Keegan Bradley, both hovering near 15%, not quite there. So Woodland, Bradley, I like for the same reasons I like Russell Henley. It's all predicated in the iron play. Now Keegan Bradley has the combination of irons and off the tee, but his deep dive numbers aren't the greatest. He doesn't avoid bogeys the best on short courses. He doesn't play short courses the best. Par 5 performance is good. Par 4 performance is very good. It's the short courses that are bringing him down a little bit. But 7th, still strong in the data model. I think Gary Woodland has been playing some fantastic golf for the past couple of months, really. We highlighted him in the Data Dive show. So that means the 3 players that are not getting a whole lot of use are Tyrrell Hatton, Mark Leishman, and Patrick Reed. I say it every time, but Patrick Reed just has to show me something. He hasn't really showed me anything lately. Mexico Open, okay. The Masters, he made the cut. The Players was okay. Just show me something. Show me a sign of life, Patrick Reed, and then I might believe. But that says it all. Iron play, atrocious. Proximity, even more atrocious. I'm going to start getting big-headed now that I just shot the best round of my life and say maybe I can compete with Patrick Reed. I clearly can't, but these are bad. These are my level kind of bad. Now, Mark Leishman and Tyrrell Hatton, I've got them rated very similarly. I kind of like Tyrrell Hatton this week. He plays short courses pretty darn well. His irons are good. Now, his proximity aren't the best, but he hits greens. Same with Leishman. I like these players. I like them enough that I think I would give them a slight boost in terms of priority since they're pivots for the area. Because you look here, you got let's look around them. Even though some of this is in the 10K, you got Corey Connors, almost 22%. Fitzpatrick, 15.5%. Then you have these 2 who are hovering around 8%. Mark Leishman under, Tyrrell Hatton over, but we'll say 8% for both of them. Then Keegan, almost 15%. Russell Henley, 17%. Gary Woodland, almost 15%. So, there is a whole lot of chalk in this area, which means these 2 guys are getting forgotten. So if you're going to use Tyrrell Hatton, you're going to gain a whole lot of leverage on people that are just kind of ignoring him. Same with Mark Leishman. Now, I have Leishman rated 1 better. Honestly, I think I like Tyrrell Hatton a little bit more this week, but I think both are good plays. So there's a look at the 9Ks. Russell Henley, I'm not going to be able to get away from. Number 1 strokes gain approach on a ball striking course. I'm just going to have to use Russell Henley. So I'm going to be using the 2 most projected owned players in Connors and Henley. I've accepted that. So I'm setting myself up for 5v5s or even a 4v4 if I want to put Connors and Henley together. So that means I really have to find some uniqueness elsewhere in the price board. I think I have a little bit for you all, but it's in the 7Ks, so I'm not sure how unique it's going to be. But anyway, so I can't get away from Connors, can't get away from Russell Henley. I like Woodland a lot. I like Keaton Bradley, a lot of it based on the approach. But in the 9Ks, I mean, I'm going to say Russell Henley's number one for me. All things considered, it's very tough for me to say who is second between Gary Woodland, Keegan, and Terrell Hatton. Terrell Hatton being so unique this week, or at least projected to be unique, really appealing to me. So take a long look at Terrell Hatton. He plays short courses well. His irons are pretty darn good. Par 4 performance has been okay. Par 5 performance has been very good if those matter more than I think. So take a look at Terrell Hatton. There's a look at the 9Ks. Moving into the 8s, you've got Paul Casey, Sergio, Max Homa, Siwoo, Seamus Power, Jason Day, Webb Simpson, and Cameron Young. You have your third most projected owned player in this range in the 8Ks. It's Cameron Young. Again, more chalk that I won't be able to get away from. Now, I cannot put Connors, Henley, and Young together. It's just asking for an ownership of 20%, like matching 20 to 25% of your fellow contestants in these GPPs. But it's going to be hard for me not to get away from one of them in all of my lineups. Shoot, probably half or even more will have two of the three. I just can't stomach the thought of having all three. But there was a lot to like here with Cameron Young. Like I've said it now for a month and a half. His irons aren't as bad as this. As the numbers say, they are getting better. I mean, look here. I was very confident that they weren't this bad. Then he had the very good Farmers. He had the very good Genesis. The Honda was good. And then the RBC Heritage. A very, very similar style course. The Honda and the RBC Heritage. And he's, top 20 both, including a podium finish at the RBC Heritage. A lot to like with Cameron Young. So, again, more chalk I won't be able to get away from. He's the third most projected owned player at 16.5%. You'll notice that I have completely unstarred Paul Casey, even though he is 12th in my rankings. This is simply the fact of prove to me that you're healthy. If Paul Casey comes out and plays extremely well, I'm going to lose. I am not willing to risk having Paul Casey in my lineups and him withdrawing again. I've been burnt the past 2 times. I had him, quite a bit at the match play, and then another tournament before that. I got burned. So prove to me that you're healthy. So this is one of the conditions that I'll lose to that I say every week. What am I willing to lose to? This week it's Paul Casey. Just prove to me that you're healthy. But elsewhere in the 8Ks, Cameron Young, we've already talked about. Max Homa getting a whole lot of love, just under 14%. I really like Max Homa this week. 12th off the tee, 12th in strokes gained approach. Now, he does not play short courses well at all, so that is one reason to be wary. But, other than his short course metrics, everything kind of jumps off the page. He's 4th in strokes gained, par 3. Par 3s, I think, are going to be a pretty important factor this week. Greens, speaking to the approach, the proximity on greens and regulation is pretty darn good. So, a lot to like with Max Homa. He's sitting at 14%. I wish it was a little bit lower. I'm not going to be able to say it's a fade for me, but I'm pretty disappointed that it's at hovering near 14%. Elsewhere, Siwoo 13%. Okay, it's kind of like Answer. Don't feel great about it. Don't feel bad about it. Seamus Power 11%. Paul Casey's actually getting 11%. So I guess your fellow contestants aren't wary of the withdrawal factor like I am. So you've got one major pivot and then another semi-pivot. Sergio is a semi-pivot, and Sergio is a little bit tough for me. Like, he plays short courses extremely well. He does. And generally he just overpowers them. He's 8th in strokes gained off the tee. But his irons have been shit. I mean, complete utter shit. The par 3 performance, not good. The length of the par 4 is not good. So all of his is predicated in off the tee. Now, if this happens to be a week where Sergio's irons click, or he can Abraham answer himself around this course and just strokes gained off the tee his way to a top 5 finish, then Sergio is somebody to look at. I mean, look at these off the tee numbers. It's just immaculate. Inverse, his strokes gained approach numbers are, good Lord, cover your eyes, run away. I can't even fathom words for how bad these are. So, but Sergio's putter's actually been warming up quite a bit. So, I'm torn on Sergio. Seeing him at 7.5%, I can throw him in a lineup or two and feel okay about it. But to have a lot of exposure to Sergio makes me queasy. And then the pure pivot in the area, and the pure pivot, I mean, in the tournament overall, no matter where you are on the price board, Jason Day's at 2.5%. And I understand it. Irons, terrible. Off the tee, terrible. His big draw this week is the short course narrative. He has played short courses extremely well. Par 4s are pretty good. But his performance this season has been all on really short courses. The Amex is pretty darn short. He clunker finish or middling finish, but he made the cut. Now the Farmers is very long. He had that fantastic Farmers. It's very long. But Pebble Beach, short course, played well, top 25. So he doesn't play often. If you believe in the short course stuff, then go with Jason Day. I've got him started because he's in the top half of my rankings, but barely. So I don't feel great about Jason Day. There's a look at the 8Ks for me. Mainly I can't get away from Cameron Young, so that's 3 of 3 that I won't be able to get away from. And then I am completely out on Paul Casey until he proves that he's healthy, which is probably going to be this week. I'm going to lose in DFS because that's just the way things go for me. Let's move to the high 7s. You got Aaron Ryan, Matt Kuchar, Keith Mitchell, Doug Gim, Johnny Vegas, Brian Harmon, Kevin Streelman, Matt Jones, Sepp Straka, Matthew Neesmith, Joel Damon, Lonto Griffin, C.T. Pan, Brandon Wu, David Lipsky, and Troy Merritt. In this range, you've got 2 players that are getting a whole lot of use, and you got some guys that are getting some middling type use, or at least projected. So the 2 heavily used players in here, Sepp Straka, again, love Sepp Straka this week. His win at the Honda, it doesn't jump out as a comparison course, but it's a short course. It generally plays difficult, a lot of water in play. Honda generally mandates ball striking. There's a lot to like with Sepp Straka here, 14%. Probably going to have to limit a little bit of use because of the ownership, but man, I like Sepp Straka a lot. The other one is Joel Damon. He's at 14%, and while I have him rated high, I don't see him with the upside that Sepp Straka does. So 14% on Joel Damon is more of a fade to me than Sepp Straka is. So yeah, I might have a little bit of Joel Damon, but 14% is easier for me to stomach fading Joel Damon than it is 14% on Sepp Straka. Elsewhere here in the high 7s, you've got Brian Harmon getting some love at 12%. Keith Mitchell right under 12%. Keith Mitchell's another player that I have kind of keyed in on this week in my own research. I mean, number 2 in short courses since the start of the PGA Tour season. Number 3 and off the tee. Now his proximity is not very good when he hits his greens in regulation. So there's enough to be worried about. But this feels like a Keith Mitchell type week for me. I don't know why, but it just feels like a Keith Mitchell week. I'm very high on Doug Gim. You want to talk about ball strikers? Doug Gim, 16th in approach, 11th in proximity for greens in regulation. His bugaboo is the putter, and putting form is not mandatory when you're coming to TPC Potomac. So I like Doug Gim a whole lot. Take a look at Kevin Streelman. I like Kevin Streelman quite a bit. So there's a lot of players in here that I like. So I can avoid the Joel Damon chalk. I can even reduce, I can't say limit, I can even reduce my Sepp Straka exposure, but I don't want to limit it too much. I'm very high on Straka this week. You get a couple of pure players. I mean, hardly any use. Matt Jones, 2%. Lonto Griffin, 4%. Okay. All right. I like Lipsky. I like Brandon Wu at 7,500. I really like Brandon Wu. I was really high on him last week. It was the top 20 that I cashed. I think he turns it, I think he runs it back and has another good tournament. So I highlighted the guys that I like, Doug Gim. Johnny Vegas, if this becomes an off-the-tee game like Sergio, if Sergio plays well, I would imagine Johnny Vegas is going to play well. Just off the tee, your way around this place. But his irons are pretty darn good too. They're a lot better than Sergio's. So if you like Sergio, take a long look at Johnny Vegas as well. Johnny Vegas is at 7.5%, so useful. Highlighted Doug Gim. Aaron Rye, okay. Kuchar, seems like this would be a Matt Kuchar course. I'm just not there. The last person I want to highlight is Matthew Neesmith. A lot of people are seemingly jumping in on the Matthew Neesmith bandwagon this week. He's at 12%. All of that being predicated on the irons makes a whole lot of sense. I was hoping, like Max Homa in the 8s, I was hoping Neesmith would be a little bit less owned. 12% though is fair. I mean, you should be taking a long look at Matthew Neesmith. So there's a look at the high 7s. Let's move to the low 7s here. There's so many names. You know what? I'm just going to skip going through all the names. I know I usually go through them. I'm just going to highlight a few players for you all. The most projected owned player in the low 7s is Martin Laird. Good old Party Marty at 12.5%. And I like Martin Laird a whole lot this week. Party Marty is a ball striker through and through. Strokes gained approach, top 20. Off the tee, 33rd. He's 8th in the length of the par 4s. 12th in greens. His proximity is very good when he hits greens. There's just a lot to like with Martin Laird. He's getting a whole lot of love, at least in this range at 12.5%. Nobody else in the low 7s is above 9%. So it's all Martin Laird in the low 7s. So this is where I was leading when I was talking about all the chalk at the upper end of the price board. Some of the names to kind of take a look here in the low 7s. I'm always really high on Russell Knox. He's disappointed me the past 2 or 3 tournaments. Again, this should be a Russell Knox event. All ball striking, 7th in approach, 4th in proximity. I mean, good off the tee. He's good on short courses. So this says it should be a Russell Knox tournament. Then again, the past 3 tournaments have said it should be a Russell Knox tournament, and he hadn't delivered. So I can understand if you are a bit gun shy about that. I am certainly a jaded ex-lover with Russell Knox at the moment. So other names to kind of kick around here in the low 7s. I don't hate Luke List. Luke List is generally better on long courses, but he has played them okay. He's played short courses fairly well. Now, he doesn't avoid the bogeys the best. All of his performance is gaining the birdies. But, 10th in irons, top 25 and off the tee. He's a ball striker. It's what he is. And this is a ball striker's course. So I don't hate Luke List. So a couple other players here that I don't feel great about them, but to find some uniqueness, I don't mind turning to. I don't mind Alex Smalley a little bit this week. Now, the irons do scare me. You would like them to be higher. He's been okay on strokes gained total. It's off the tee, like Johnny Vegas, like Sergio. It's off the tee. His greens are fine. So he's hitting greens. He's just not getting it close to the hole. But on small greens, that could turn around or be a benefit if he's still hitting greens in regulation at the clip he is. So take a look at Alex Smalley. The par 4 performance isn't great. He really makes it up in the par 3s, and I'm thinking the par 3s are going to be pretty important. So, I don't love the play by any means, but to get some uniqueness, look at Alex Smalley. Again, look at Russell Knox. Kurt Kitayama is somebody who has been hitting his irons very well. It wasn't too long ago that he was one of the favorites in an alternate field event. I think it was the Corrales, maybe the Puerto Rico. It's probably the Puerto Rico that he was one of the favorites. Coming off a fantastic Mexico Open. So take a look at Kurt Kitayama. His irons, a little bit like Rory and Jekyll and Hyde, but the positives far outweigh the negatives. So take a look at Kurt Kitayama. There's a reason this area of the price board is getting ignored. I don't see a whole lot here. I tried to highlight a couple of names for you all. If you want to believe in prior course success, you can take a look at Ricky. He played the Quicken Loans National events fairly well, but his form lately has just been awful. So I can't get there with Ricky, but if you want to go on previous course performance, look at Ricky. In the same vein, look at Francesco. He only played it once, but he ran away from the field in 2018. I'm so low on him because of the current form, but if you want to look at prior course success, take a look at Francesco. There's a look at the 7s. Let's take a look at the 6s. A couple of names here that I really like, and then there's not a whole lot else. There really isn't. The main play in the 6Ks is Ryan Armour at 6,800. I like Ryan Armour quite a bit, especially if I'm trying to squeeze in, say a Connors and Fitzpatrick. I know that's chalky, but just trying to throw out the example of trying to squeeze in 2 10Ks or a 10 and a 9. I like Ryan Armour quite a bit. He's 10th in my data model. I talked about him at the reveal of the rankings. Makes a whole lot of sense why he's that high. Irons, par 4 metrics, very, very good. I don't think the par 5s are going to be as important this week than they generally are on the PGA Tour. So a lot to like with Ryan Armour. The other name that I want to throw out at you all in the 6Ks is Adam Svensson. Everybody knows my penchant for Brian Stewart anytime he's a 6K play. So, Brian Stewart's an honorary, just not even needing to be said. But take a look at Adam Svensson. The irons, fantastic lately. Proximity's been good. He's been hitting enough greens to give the proximity a chance. He's good on short courses. Now, he's a little bit like Luke List. His his performance on short courses is all predicated on birdies, not avoiding the bogeys. But I talked about how the RBC Heritage and the Honda are comparison courses. You wouldn't think it, but they really are. Short courses, a lot of water in play, ball striking courses. I want you to see the performance he's had on those two events. Honda, top 10. He played immaculate, just didn't make a putt all week. We've talked about how TBC Potomac doesn't require putting form coming in. RBC Heritage played very good. I'll be generous, rounded to a top 25. It's really a top 30. The irons, again, very good. The irons are getting a lot more consistent in the positive. Now, yes, he'll throw in some clunkers, some poor performances, but the irons are getting much more consistent. The off the tee is pure Jekyll and Hyde. I'm going on the predication of the irons more than the off the tee this week. He's also played short courses extremely well. The aforementioned RBC Heritage, the Honda, the Pebble Beach. Yes, it's a middling to clunker of a finish, but at least he made the cut. Amex, same. Sony, top 10 at another short course. Take a long look at Adam Svensson, especially since he is only at where'd he go? He's only at 5%, so he's less. He's half the ownership of Ryan Armour, and I like Ryan Armour a lot. I really do. It's just, if he's the chalky play in this area at 10%, I'll come up to Adam Svensson for $100 more any day of the week. Shoot, I might use both of them to try to squeeze in a stars and scrubs type of look. So there's a look at the 6Ks. Like I said, there's just not much this week. I wanted to highlight Adam Svensson. Ryan Armour's a good play. He's chalky for the area, so you need to use him with some uniqueness elsewhere. I don't think you can use a Corey Connors, a Russell Henley, and a Ryan Armour all in the same team. I think that's going to be very, very, very common. But if you want to throw in Ryan Armour and say some chalkier plays, maybe like a Sepp Straka or a Cameron Young and Ryan Armour, I don't think it's going to kill you. No, the aforementioned Brian Stewart, anytime he's a 6K play, I generally squeeze him in a few lineups. Austin Smotherman has, he's let me down a couple of times, but kind of like Russell Knox, this says it should be a good course for him, at least ball striking wise. Now, he has not played short courses well, so maybe that's enough of a reason to get away from him. But there is a look at the price board for the Wells Fargo. Before we move to Microsoft Excel, let's look at Windfinder. And there is a reason I didn't put wind into here, but it's not the most calm week either. So I just refreshed it. Thursday, you've got some wind, a high of 66, but the wind calms and switches direction. Now, again, I don't know if this is, crosswind, headwind. I just don't know. But the wind does change direction and it really dies down. And I want you to see what it does Friday. It starts the same as Thursday AM, but then it increases steadily, but it increases and more gusty with rain. There's supposed to be thunderstorms in the area on Friday in Washington, D.C. This has the potential to be like the Players in a complete wash. And the reason I bring this up, I don't think it's going to be as severe of a split as the Players was. However, looking at, and if the forecast holds up, I'm not a weatherman, obviously, but if this forecast holds up, I've got a decent advantage for the Thursday PM, Friday AM, especially if the thunderstorms really do roll in and play is suspended. Guys can handle a bit of rain. The course softens up with the greens being small. Guys can generally attack flags, and that's even more of a reason to focus on strokes gained approach. So I've got a decent little advantage for Thursday PM, Friday AM. So make sure you look at the tee times. I meant to bring that up. I apologize. I didn't. Getting prepared for everything behind the scenes for the show. But take a look at the leaderboard. I would give a decent boost to Thursday PM, Friday AM, and or a decrease to the Thursday AM, Friday PM grouping. All right, with that said, let's move to Microsoft Excel here. Going to have some skewed vision here. All right, so let me sort this, make this easier for me. Sort by salary. All right. So for those who play tiers contests, and I make it no secret, I am not a tiers contest aficionado. All I can do is go by projected ownerships in classic style tournaments. It is what it is. So if you do play tiers, let me know how those ownerships generally go. Again, I can just give you the best advice I can based on projected ownerships here. So, Tier 1, Rory, Tony Finau, Abraham Answer. Rory's probably the best play, but again, due to ownership, or at least projected ownership, I'm going to go Tony Finau. I like Tony Finau quite a bit this week. Tier 2, Corey Connors, Matt Fitzpatrick, Mark Leishman, Keegan, and Russell Henley. There is a whole lot to like here. Corey Connors is my number one player in the field. He's probably going to be really darn chalky. Russell Henley, probably going to be chalky as well. I'm going to go Connors just because I think he's the tournament favorite. And I avoided the chalk from Rory. But I don't hate Russell Henley. I don't hate Fitzpatrick. I really don't hate Keegan. I think Leishman's a pretty clear fifth in the tier. So for me, the rankings would go Connors, Woodland, probably Fitzpatrick, and then Bradley, although those two are pretty close in Tier 2, but I'll just go Corey Connors. Tier 3, Terrell Hatton, Gary Woodland, Paul Casey, Sergio, and Max Homa. Well, no thanks on Paul Casey for the same reasons I was in Classic. Just show me that you're healthy. Sergio is intriguing, but you have better options in this tier. So for me, it's between the speculative play in Terrell Hatton or Gary Woodland and Max Homa. I'm very, very high on Max Homa this week, so I'm going to take Max Homa. But I mentioned Terrell Hatton in Classic. I don't hate that. Gary Woodland's just a solid play. I imagine he'll be pretty chalky, though. Tier 4, Patrick Reed. No thank you. Just right off the bat, no thank you. Siwoo, Seamus Power, Jason Day, Webb Simpson, Cameron Young, and Aaron Rye. Cameron Young's by choice. He's going to be the chalkiest. He's probably the best play in this tier. I think he is the best play in this tier. Aaron Rye's kind of intriguing. Webb Simpson, you just have to show me you're healthy. Jason Day, Power is okay. Like, Power and Kim are kind of the same. It's just, I don't feel great. I don't feel bad about them. So I'm going to go Cameron Young. Aaron Rye's at least a little intriguing. Top five. God, I do it. Tier 5, Matt Kuchar, Keith Mitchell, Doug Gim, Johnny Vegas, Brian Harmon, Kevin Streelman, Sepp Straka. For me, it's between Doug Gim and Sepp Straka. I'm going to go with Doug Gim, thinking that Sepp Straka is more widely owned in a tiers contest. I don't mind Keith Mitchell at all. I don't mind Johnny Vegas at all. But for me, I'm going to go Gim with a second choice of Straka. Tier 6, Matt Jones, Matthew Neesmith, Joel Damon, Lonto Griffin, Anirban Lahiri, Francesco Buonari, and Ricky Fowler. If you're a firm believer in prior course performance, it's one of these two. But no thanks for me. I am going to go with Matthew Neesmith, all predicated on the iron play. So there's a look at the tiers contests. Let's start building some lineups here and figure out how we can beat some of these chalkier builds. If you're going to go with the chalky of chalky, you have to use the player that's getting the most projected ownership. That's Corey Connors. I always like to define their boundaries. They've been using Ryan Armour as at the bottom. So this is their boundary. And that gives them quite a bit of room to work with. Now, depending on the style of team that your fellow contestants are making, this is where it starts to branch off immediately. Are they going stars and scrubs? Because if they are, they're going Ryan Armour and Martin Laird at the bottom, and they're probably going something to the effect of Corey Connors, maybe Matthew Fitzpatrick, but I'm going to say Russell Henley just to try to save them a bit of some money. Actually, you know what? No, let's go ahead and do Fitzpatrick just because I see how much is left. So, wow, that is weird. For some reason, Excel is bugging out, even though I can still type. You know what? I'm gonna have to just open this back up. We've got Fitzpatrick, Connors, Laird, and Armour. This leaves them 8,000 exactly for each player here. Now, at 8,000 is exactly Cameron Young. And then if they want to go into the high sevens, they've been going, say, Sepp Straka. This leaves a little bit of money on the table for them. But you can see just the amount of ownership this is. A 15%. This is, that is nasty. I don't ever want to have to play a lineup with this much projected ownership. And that's a little bit of a stars and scrubs look for them. Let's say they go try to build a bit of a more balanced team. Instead of going Fitzpatrick, they'll probably come down to Russell Henley. And then instead of Martin Laird, I mean, they could still probably use Martin Laird, but I'm going to bring them all the way up to maybe like a CT Pan here at 7,500. So that, again, that still gives them 8,150 per, so they can actually go above the Cameron Young threshold. Let's say they want to do a Max Homa. That leaves them 77, which is a Brian Harmon. He's getting some use. So there's a look at a more balanced-ish build. It's still at 14.5%. Blah, don't like it. Let's see if they do the big three. You are already at 11%, and you still have 7,900 per to play around with. So let's see if you go. Let's say you go Sepp Straka, who's another widely owned player. Leaves you 8,200. It's Jason Day. He's not getting a whole lot of love, but you can see just how chalky these 5 players are. So let's try to build around that. I mentioned how Rory is going to be so extremely prohibitive in terms of price. I like Tony Finau quite a bit, and I don't mind Ryan Armour. I think he's a good play, but I mentioned Adam Svensson in the 6K, so I'll define that as my boundary. Still have quite a bit to look forward to here, as I have 8,100 per, basically. In the low sevens, it was Martin Laird. I was upfront and transparent. I don't like a whole lot in the low sevens. If there is a player, just to get some uniqueness, it's Alex Smalley. I guess I'll use him in this example and try to squeeze in some upper tier guys. If I start with Tony Finau, now I know some of these players will be chalky, but using Smalley here allows me to try to squeeze in a Corey Connors or a Matthew Fitzpatrick, a bigger name, if I'm willing to go with Alex Smalley here. That gives me 7,600 per. There are plenty of players in the high sevens I highlighted for you all. Let's see. 7,600, or average 7,600. Like Doug Gim, I like a lot this week. He's at 78. That gives me 7,400. That is, if you like Ricky Fowler, if you like Francesco Molinari, I don't like either of those. Adam Long, Lahiri. Like if I come off of Fitzpatrick, let's just say Russell Henley. I know he's chalky, but I'm trying to highlight the fact that if I'm willing to go Alex Smalley, I can take some of these chalkier players. Let's take Doug Gim out. I still have 8,000. Yeah, all right. Doug Gim leaves me 8,100, which is Webb Simpson. I'm not terribly crazy about. I can go Cameron Young, probably right around 10%. 11%. Don't like that. I was hoping to be 10. So you still have to find a decent amount of uniqueness here, even with using Alex Smalley. That's just a bunch of haves and have-nots. Let's say I come off of Russell Henley. I mentioned Tyrrell Hatton. So if I'm going to look at a more stars and scrubs-ish type of lineup, I'm going Finau, Hatton. I've got 7,600 per. If I go with somebody, say like a Matthew Neesmith, who I like a lot based on the iron play, this gives me 7,700. Matt Jones, Kevin Streelman, Brian Harmon is getting a whole lot of love. I'm not terribly crazy about either of those. Like if I'm willing to go like maybe a Doug Gim and come off of Alex Smalley, and let's just say I use a chalky-ish type player in Martin Laird. That's the exact 10% that I was looking for. I have Finau, who's playing immaculate right now. Tyrrell Hatton, I think, is getting overlooked. He's not. People aren't paying attention to Tyrrell Hatton. Neesmith and Gim, the ball striking galore. Svensson and Laird. I like this setup quite a bit. Now, certainly the names can be adjusted, but I like that setup quite a bit. Let's go with a pure stars and scrubs. And because of that, I'm going to go Ryan Armour and Adam Svensson. I'm going to try to keep this under, say, 10.5%. Might be difficult considering the players that I would want to use in this style of lineup. I wonder if I can fit Rory. Let's try it. Let's see if we can fit Rory in this. So if we go Rory, we're already down to 8,200 per. So if we go Armour, Svensson, I would try not to force myself to use Martin Laird and go with 3 bottom-ish players. Let's come up to Brandon Wu, who I like at 7,500, and see what that leaves us. We've got 8,600. Depending on who you want your second player to be, like a Gary Woodland, and that leaves you 82, which is Jason Day, not terribly crazy about. If I come off of Woodland and go maybe Max Homa, who I really like this week, just wish he was a little less ownership. There's Max Homa at 86. That gives me 87. That's Sergio. Not exactly what I was looking for. And this is why I was telling you that Rory is just going to be so darn prohibitive with his price. I mean, even trying to squeeze in 2 6Ks, I can use a 7,100 Martin Laird. I wouldn't want to if I'm already using these two. That's why I don't see Rory being worth the 11,500. Now, saying that he's just going to win just to spite me. But again, I've been going with Tony Finau, but because I have went with these two, I'm actually able to go with a Tony Finau, Corey Connors, still have 8,100 for a Cameron Young if I want. Now it's still at 12%. It's very chalky. Let's see. If I come off of him, I don't mind a Keith Mitchell, a Doug Gim. I mentioned out this could be a Keith Mitchell week. That's 11%. Not exactly the uniqueness I was looking for, but there's a different style of lineup. And hoping that Finau and Connors, putting them together, are unique enough. Probably not, but I'm hoping. Or at least that would be the goal going into that. So there is a look at a few of the lineup ideas that I've been having coming into the DFS slate. I can stick around for maybe a minute or two if you all have any questions or want to see anything specific on a player or try to fit an idea of a player around a lineup structure or whatnot. Otherwise, what are your plans this weekend? I mean, you've got a whole lot going on. You've got the Wells Fargo. You've got the Kentucky Derby. Don't forget that I'm starting my baseball content on Friday. So there's a lot going on this weekend. Let me know in the comments, what kind of plans do you have? Do you go to a Derby party? Do you not know what the Derby is? It's just, let me know. So, Joey, thanks again for jumping in chat. I appreciate it, like you always do. Thanks for the support and tuning in, everybody. It's always appreciated. For all of the wagers that you have this week at the Wells Fargo, for all of the DFS contests that you're in for the Wells Fargo, for any Kentucky Derby wagers that you have this weekend, and for this weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.